her up, I guess. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll get our reset your inputs. You got it? Okay. Good. We got an echo? We now have an echo. Dr. Richard. Okay. You can hear it twice in case you missed it the first time. Okay, now I have got it set up. This might be part of the reason why we're having issues. So I've got it set up where we're going to play the book where you can listen to it. So I want you to listen to chapter 1 when Richard's got it set up to go. Go ahead and play it for us. Follow along as we go. It's done in a dramatic version, so you get to hear the voices change as it works through. You have a narrator, and then obviously you got the people who are acting out the different parts in it. So go ahead.
The Book of Ruth, Chapter 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her 2 sons. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her. And they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have an husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would ye tarry for them till they were grown? Would ye stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people, and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said,
Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me.
When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So they 2 went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass, when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them. And they said, Is this Naomi? And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest.
Stop right there at this point. Just kind of doing a rough, because I only have like 3 questions listed in my book, and I'm going to give you a little bit more because 3 is not covering the book very well. But why do they leave? Why does this family in the time of the judges leave? They're Bethlehemites. Anybody know? First off, anybody know anything about Bethlehem? You know anything about that town? Is that a famous town? At least to us now. So where are they from? The place where somebody else is going to be born. Anybody know? Jesus will be born there, right? Okay, they're from a place where a famous king is going to be born. Anybody know who that is? David, okay? So they're from this place, but what do they do what forces them to leave, or what is it that they choose to leave for? Famine. Now, it doesn't say all the nation of Israel does this with them, but they do. It's sort of like they didn't want to take the difficulty that's going on, and they left. Now, there could have been others. I'm sure there might have been others that left, but they're almost kind of demonstrating a family that is sort of kind of falling away from where they're supposed to be. Falling away from the Lord, falling away from His purpose for their life. And you'll see that by way of what they do when they're down there. When they get down there, what do we find out? What first happens? The husband dies. There we see Elkanah, or is it Elkanah? I'm sorry, Elimelech. Get the wrong husband there. Elimelech, he dies. Okay? Then, while they're in that process, two sons that are there, what do they do before they die? They marry what kind of people? Moabites. Are the Israelites supposed to marry the Moabites? Does anybody know anything about what God said about them? They're the ones that tried to curse. You remember that guy trying to curse the children of Israel and kept saying that? You remember Balak and Balaam in that whole issue where they were trying to curse? And then because they never could really officially curse, they tempted the Israelites with their seductions and basically brought a plague upon the nation of Israel. And God swore that never would a Moabite be allowed to enter into the land of Israel. These are those people. They went to a place where God has already cursed those people and said they're not welcome in our land. And not only do they do that, what do they do when they're down there? They marry their sons off to them. Do you think those Moabite women are serving God? Orpah and Ruth? No, they serve Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, who's a false god. And very possibly they have begun to follow Chemosh while they're down there. So what ends up happening to those two boys? Mahlon and Chilion. Yeah, they die. So now it's Naomi, the wife of Elimelech, and you've got Ruth and Orpah, whom she's only is related to by marriage. They're Moabites. Apparently, they're still Moabite followers, or at least the false god followers. So while she's down there all by herself, what does Naomi hear about? That the people in Bethlehem, or the people in Judah, that area of the world, are all of a sudden now out of the famine. Now, they've been gone for how many years? 10 years. They've been gone. And she decides, you know what? God has basically cursed me while I'm down here. I shouldn't have been down here. My husband shouldn't have gone here. We shouldn't have married our boys off to these women. And now I've basically lost my entire family. I'm going to move back. And she no longer wants to be called Naomi. She wants to be called what? Mara. Did you know what name Mara is related to? No, what name? Mary. It's a name that we get the name Mary from. Mara means bitterness. Bitterness. And she says, I don't want to be called Naomi anymore. I want to be called Mara because the Almighty, she said, has afflicted me. Because basically it's like she's overwhelmed with guilt because I shouldn't even have been here. I did what I shouldn't have done. So I'm being afflicted for it. Now, the other thing that shows kind of her even wrong thinking at this point, or maybe not wrong thinking, I don't know, depends on the way she's looking at this, is she tells those two daughters to do what? Daughters-in-law to do what? Go back home, find someone else to marry. I don't have any sons left. And I don't have any sitting in my womb, and I'm too old to get married again, and this is going to be way too long for you to wait for me to produce you a couple more boys. So it's time for you to move on. Go back to your family, go back to your gods, go back to your culture. She basically doesn't have an evangelistic bone in her body at this point that she wants to reach the lost. Does she? Go back and live like you used to live. Live like pagans and live against God. Well, Orpah, she does. She hugs and she kisses Naomi because it's her mother-in-law, but she returns. But Ruth, it says that even though Naomi tries to get her to return, Ruth doesn't. She steadfastly holds on to Naomi. And that famous line or famous couple verses that she says here really shows that it's more than just she wants to hang on to Naomi. Look what it says here. Verse 16, it says, "And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee, for whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me." You know what she just said, basically? It's not that I want to hang around with Naomi only. I am willing to cast off everything I have always been to become one of you. This is what, just say this for a second, this is what conversion looks like. When a person gets right with God, this is what conversion looks like. They don't continue to be the person they used to be. They have become new citizens, and it's not just a title only, it is an action. You know, you hear about people coming across the border in our country, crossing over illegally, and still holding on to their culture and having their little Mexico or their little Central American culture and just refusing to integrate with our culture. That's not the practice that's happening here. That they're not converting to Americans. Basically, they're just trying to get America to adopt to them. This is the completely opposite attitude. It's I realize I'm leaving one country, I'm leaving one lifestyle, and I'm going and embracing another. And I can't continue to go that way anymore. And that's what we would say about Christianity. When you become a follower of Christ, it's not just I got the title Christian, but I basically turned my back on everything I used to be, and I now am this person. A follower and identifier with the Lord Jesus Christ. All right, now the next section is going to take us about 12 to 15 minutes, so hold your seats there for a little bit. We're going to read chapter 2 through 4. Follow along. This is the story that plays out, and we're going to see some amazing things that do play out when they get there and what God is doing in the middle of this. Okay? So go ahead and get us started.
Chapter 2. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi,
Let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find grace.
And she said unto her,
Go, my daughter.
And she went and came, and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and said unto the reapers,
The Lord be with you.
And they answered him,
The Lord bless thee.
Then said Boaz unto his servant that was set over the reapers.
Whose damsel is this?
And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said,
It is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came, and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house.
Then said Boaz unto Ruth,
Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go unto the vessels, and drink of that which the young men have drawn.
Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him,
Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger?
And Boaz answered and said unto her,
It hath fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore. The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust.
Then she said,
Let me find favor in thy sight, my lord, for that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaidens.
And Boaz said unto her,
At mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar.
And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying,
Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not.
So she gleaned in the field until even, and beat out that she had gleaned. And it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth, and gave to her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. And her mother-in-law said unto her,
Where hast thou gleaned today? And where wroughtest thou? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee.
And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said,
The man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz.
And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law,
Blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead.
And Naomi said unto her,
The man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen.
And Ruth the Moabitess said,
He said unto me also, Thou shalt keep fast by my young men, until they have ended all my harvest.
And Naomi said unto Ruth her daughter-in-law,
It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in any other field.
So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of barley harvest and of wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. Chapter 3. Then Naomi her mother-in-law said unto her,
My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? And now is not Boaz of our kindred, with whose maidens thou wast? Behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee, and get thee down to the floor. But make not thyself known unto the man, until he shall have done eating and drinking. And it shall be, when he lieth down, that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in, and uncover his feet, and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do.
And she said unto her,
All that thou sayest unto me, I will do.
And she went down unto the floor, and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. And she came softly, and uncovered his feet, and laid her down. And it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid, and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. And he said,
Who art thou?
And she answered,
I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman.
And he said,
Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followedst not young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that thou requirest. For all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Tarry this night, and it shall be in the morning that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman's part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee. As the Lord liveth, lie down until the morning.
And she lay at his feet until the morning, and she rose up before one could know another. And he said,
Let it not be known that a woman came into the floor.
Also he said,
Bring the veil that thou hast upon thee, and hold it.
And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley, and laid it on her, and she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said,
Who art thou, my daughter?
And she told her all that the man had done to her. And she said,
These 6 measures of barley gave he me, for he said to me, Go not empty unto thy mother-in-law.
Then said she,
Sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day.
Chapter 4. Then went Boaz up to the gate, and sat him down there. And behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said,
Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here.
And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city, and said,
Sit ye down here.
And they sat down. And he said unto the kinsman,
Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land which was our brother Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee.
And he said,
I will redeem it.
Then said Boaz,
What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance.
And the kinsman said,
I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it.
Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things. A man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz,
Buy it for thee.
So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people,
Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Kilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren. And from the gate of his place ye are witnesses this day.
And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said,
We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. And do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman.
So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the women said unto Naomi,
Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel, and he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age, for thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him.
And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the women her neighbors gave it a name, saying,
There is a son born to Naomi.
And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Pharez. Pharez begat Hezron, and Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Amminadab, and Amminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David.
All right, we'll talk a little bit about what all that was. There's a lot of stuff that was said and done in there that if you're not familiar with the culture, you may not understand what they were doing. So, you hear me good? Good? Good. All right, couldn't tell. All right. So, whenever they get to Israel, Naomi and Ruth are kind of on their own, right, at this point. And the first thing that Naomi tells Ruth that she needs to do is what? Anybody got an idea? Go out and get food. And one of the things that was allowed in the land of Israel, that God had actually made as a law, is that when the farmer harvested his field, he was not to harvest the corners of the field. Why? Because the poor were supposed to be allowed to reap of the corners of the field who did not have any means to take care of themselves. So God was already looking out for the poor in the land of Israel, even up to that point. And so where's she going to go? She's going to go find a field that has the corners open and starts reaping the corners, okay? And it says her hap, I like that phrase, her hap, or her word, that word, was to go to the fields of Boaz. Now, hap means her happenstance. She just happened to do this. She just happened. You know, we call those coincidences. humanly speaking, but are there any coincidences when it comes to God's working? No. Humanly speaking, this was a coincidence that she happens to go upon the field of Boaz, a near kinsman to Elimelech. Okay, and we'll talk about what that means in a moment. But basically, he's a close related, it appears maybe even a brother of Elimelech, or someone, maybe a cousin of Elimelech in some way. And she starts reaping, and immediately Boaz catches the attention, or she catches the attention of Boaz, and what does he start doing for her? Just leaves piles of grain and says, don't even get it. Don't even get it. Leave the piles of grain there. And when she comes, and don't scorn her for coming and grabbing those piles. He started taking care of her. And then finally he approaches her and he invites her to just do that through the rest of the harvest. And that's going to be probably a 2-month process at least. He invites her to come and do that while they're going through the wheat and the barley harvest. And at one point, he doesn't just say you can reap of the corners of the field. He says you can even reap of the sheaves. Now, anybody know what the sheaves are? Yeah, it's the stuff they've actually cut down and tied together. And he's basically saying the part that's already been sort of reaped, she can reap of that. You don't have to go cut it out of the field yourself. It's already been cut for you. It's sitting there in a pile. It might even be tied together. You can take what you want out of that. And he kept allowing her to do that and be part of that the entire time. And the first day, just to kind of come back, when she does get home and Naomi or Ruth comes back with a whole bunch of grain, she goes, how in the world did you get so much grain so quickly? She says, well, I happened to go on this guy's field, and he didn't just let me reap the corners. He just let me have piles of food and let me get whatever I wanted. And she goes, well, whose field did you fall on or go to? Well, it was Boaz. And she says, man, the Lord, even after all that we have done, has shown his favor toward us because he's a near kinsman. Now, what is so significant about a near kinsman? Well, according to what God established in the law, and we'll look at this in just a moment, what God established in the law, because the land was given to the families, the tribes of Israel. You remember, we looked at those maps where they were all parted out, where they each had a certain portion of the land, and each tribe had a portion, and within the tribe, there were families that had portions. So you had family names that the land stayed with. And even at certain points when they were poor, they could sell their land to somebody else. But at the year of Jubilee, which was every 50 years, they had to restore it back to the name. Well, if somebody happens to die who's in that family name, and there's nobody to pick it up and take it, it ends up being lost forever. The name, the family, the land that belongs to that family line is lost to whoever buys it at that point. And from that point on, it's now somebody else's eternally, if you will, if you'd say it that way. It doesn't get to be restored. But what God established in the law was that if somebody, a male child dies and there is a near kinsman, they may not be of that direct family, but there's a near kinsman, maybe they're a cousin or something. They have the responsibility, this is what he says, to marry the wife of the fallen, whatever relative he is, cousin, whatever, and raise up a child in the name of that dead father, so that the name is not lost to the family, and the land is not lost to the family. And so that's what's happening here in the account. A near kinsman here, according to the account here, is the man Boaz. Now, if you read in the text, you'll find out that Boaz makes the point here in chapter 3. He says this to Ruth. Look at verse number 10. He said, blessed be thou the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast showed more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch thou followest not young men, whether poor or rich. What is he saying about himself? He's not a young man. He's an old man. Okay? And he's saying you're acting more noble than you were even at the beginning when you came to support Naomi and care for Naomi and her basically her bitterness, her trouble that she's now going through. You came to be with her, to be a help to her. You abandoned your old life. You adopted the true God. Even at one point, Boaz says you came to trust under the wings of the Almighty, sort of a way, kind of a imagery of like a little baby chick coming under the chicken's wings for protection. You've come under the protection of God Almighty. And it's become evident, and everybody in the land knows, or at least in the area knows, that you have done that. And not only are you willing to do that, you are also willing to follow the law that says that to raise up a child in the name of Mahlon, that's the son of Elimelech, that's the one that she was married to, and keep the land. And really what the condition only comes down to is, does the man want to do it? Does the man have the ability to do it? Does he want to do it? Okay? Someone said it this way, divided it into 3 R's. They have the right to do it because they're a family member. They have the resources, which means they have the financial ability to do this. And third, they have the resolve to do it, which is their desire to do it. Rights, resources, resolve to do this. Now, I want to show you where this is found in the Old Testament law. So go back to Deuteronomy chapter 5. Hold your place in where we were at, because it's important. We'll be back there in just a minute. Deuteronomy chapter 25. And look at verse 5 and 6. Who wants to read that? If you find it. Deuteronomy 25, 5 and 6. You got it? Go ahead, T-Dave. Real loud. Real loud. No. Go ahead and read it, David.
If brethren dwell together, and one of them die, and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel.
There it is. That's the point he's making. So this guy is going to marry her with the intent of raising up their first child in the name of that son that was lost, or the name of the dad that was the potential dad that was lost that never had a child. Okay? And this is what's called a levirate marriage. This is you'll hear people say that. That's what they're talking about here. It's the right and the responsibility of the near kinsman to care for the family line enough that he would raise up the child in that name. Now, you might remember this is referred to in the New Testament when they asked Jesus if a woman's husband dies and then she marries his brother and he dies, and it keeps going on till 7 brothers. It's referring to this principle right here, what was said in the law, and obviously that was meant to be trying to trap Jesus, but that was what they were referring to. There was this levirate, or this what's also called the kinsman redeemer law that was set up, where the near kinsman is redeeming the testimony and the name and the land of the brother through a child that would be born through that second marriage, okay, or through that next marriage. Let me show you something else. Hold on a second. Let me show you something else that does happen. Go back to Ruth chapter 3. This is where Naomi suggests that Ruth is to go to Boaz, who is that near kinsman redeemer, who's obviously showed kindness to Ruth, to beg him or to ask him to do the duty of the kinsman redeemer. And the way she goes about doing it looks a little strange, but I'll just kind of explain what's going on. After he's been done harvesting through the day, he goes into the mill or wherever it was that the threshing floor would be, and he's laying down there, and I'm guessing he's staying the nights there while he's still working. And Naomi tells Ruth, go in to the threshing floor where Boaz is going to be. He'll be laying down over there. Then go uncover his feet and lay at his feet. He said, well, what does that have to do with anything? It was a way of submission. She was basically speaking about the fact that she was going to submit to this responsibility if he's willing to submit to it. When he wakes up, she then says to him, cover me with your skirt. It's not say open up your robe and stuff. It's a way of saying, let me come under your protection. Let me come under your name, your authority, and do the responsibility of a kinsman redeemer toward me and toward Naomi and toward Mahlon and toward the land. Now, good thing is, he becomes the owner of that land. Sort of. He does. But the name is going to pass down. It's not going to pass down to any children after the firstborn. It's only going to pass down through the very firstborn, and it's not even going to be referred to Boaz's name. It's going to be referred to in the line of Mahlon. You understand that? So he does become the owner and the caretaker and the provider and all of that kind of stuff of all those children. And the husband of Ruth, he will become that. But in a sense, he's sacrificing any rights to that land, any rights to owning that when it's his time to pass on. It will go to the child who is the firstborn, and it will be credited not to Boaz, it'll be credited to Mahlon, which is connected to Elimelech. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, and so that's a difficult situation. And do they have the right to refuse it? Well, we see it. They did, right here in this book. So while she's asking him to do that, one of the things that he says, I would love to do this, but there is one kinsman nearer than I, and he has the right to it first. Now, it never mentions who he is, doesn't say anything about his relation completely, but it does mention there's a closer, nearer kinsman. And this nearer kinsman has the right and the responsibility to first do so, raising up a child in the name. So he makes plans. He says, we get to jump to chapter 4. He makes plans. He said, tomorrow we're going to work this out and figure it out. And so he goes and he sits down in the gate. That's significant, right? We've seen that before. In the gate is where the place of business is done. And he gets 10 elders to get involved in the gate. And then he sees this nearer kinsman passing by and he says, hey, get over here, come sit down. We have some business to talk about. And he tells him, there's land. You're a nearer kinsman. There's land that you can buy. It's Elimelech's land, which was supposed to be Mahlon's land. But Elimelech died, Mahlon died, Chilion has died. There's no one to raise up to own that land anymore. You're the next kinsman in the line. Do you want it? And the nearer kinsman says, sure, I'll redeem it. I'll buy it. He says, well, there's a hitch. There's a catch to this. If you take this land, you have to become the wife to Ruth. Then you will also be taking care of Naomi, the wife of Elimelech, while you own all this land. And he goes, I don't think I could do that. That's going to mar my inheritance. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that. Maybe, possibly, he's got other children that he intended that to go to if he was going to get that land, and he knows he won't get to do that. So he doesn't want to connect that point. And so he says, I don't want to do that. And so they had a way to show they declined it. Anybody see what it was that it said they could do? Take their shoe and hand it to the other guy. And it was their outward symbol of saying, the other guy gets to have it. I'm passing that responsibility on to someone else. And that's what he did. And so then Boaz purchases the land and even purchases, if you will, the right to marry Ruth to become the protector of Naomi. And then we get to the very end of the story, which is why it's so significant here. They have a child. What do they name the child? Obed. And Obed is the father of Jesse, which is the father of David. Now, this tells you the timing of the book. The book was written, obviously, after David's time, doesn't it? Or at least it was, this little last part was written after the time of David. But the significance is that God put a Moabite in the line of David. Do you see that? Allowed a Moabite to be the one who would raise up a child that would be in the line of David. But then that takes it even further. God allowed a Moabite to be in the line of David, but not just in the line of David. Who else comes out of the line of David? Jesus Christ. Somebody that was not even allowed to be allowed in the land of Israel gets to be brought into the line of David. What an amazing thought, huh? Okay, let me give you a worksheet. Go ahead and pass this around. Go ahead and come in. Let me give you a worksheet. Go ahead and pass it around. No. I don't know about that. I can't remember for sure. It might be. I can't remember. You talking about Lot and his 2 daughters? I can't remember if Moab comes out of that line or not for sure.
Well, I thought the children of the...
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know. Okay, we're going to work through this. This is not really hard to do. I did it myself here, but I want you to look up that Ruth, you're obviously in Ruth 4:13 through 22. Lay out you've got 3 different genealogies that it gives you here. One's going to do it in reverse, and the other 2 are going to do it straight, like we would go Salmon to whoever after that. But the third one is actually going to do it and incorporate another name into it. So they want to kind of show you that. So if you find the Ruth one, look at Ruth 4:13 to 22. It starts with Salmon. There it says to pick up with Salmon. In fact, you really don't even need the 13 to 22. You just need 21 and 22. You got Salmon, who begets. Then you could put the next one down. Who's the next one after Salmon? Boaz. Then Boaz begets Obed. There's your third one. Then you've got Obed begetting Jesse. And then you got Jesse begetting David. Okay? So really you got 5 names there together. Salmon, Boaz, Obed, Jesse, David. Okay? Now if you do Luke's passage, it does it all in reverse. Because Luke starts from Jesus and works his way all the way back to Adam. Okay? And we see that played out in that text. If you want to look at that, you can see it. For time's sake, I'm giving you a little bit of extra time's sake. Okay? All right. Then we got Matthew's account. Go over to Matthew and look at that one real quick. Matthew chapter number 1. And look at verses 1 to 6. And there's where you see an extra name incorporated. And really all you need to look at is verse 5 and 6. And see if you can find the extra name that's added in there. And Boaz, by the way, is spelled a little different. It's spelled like B-O-O-Z, but it's Boaz. Booze. It's probably not meant to be long. It's probably meant to be Boaz, the way it's put together. Obed of Ruth. There's your extra name that's added in there. You see that? So you got Salmon, Boaz. What's the next one? Obed of Ruth, Jesse, and David. By the way, Matthew, of all the genealogies, is the only one that incorporates women in it. And he doesn't just do one, he does 3 at least. Look at verse 3. It says, Judas begat Pharez and Zerah of Tamar. There's one of them. Then we have Salmon begot Boaz of Ruth. And then we have another one where you have Jesse begat David the king. David begat Solomon of her that had been the wife of Urias, and we know that is Bathsheba. There's another one in here, I believe, where it talks about, you got Rahab is in here somewhere. Yeah, Boaz of Rahab. There you go. Boaz of Rahab, and Boaz begat Obed of Ruth. So Boaz of Rahab, anybody remember who Rahab is? She's the one that sheltered the spies. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we do see some names there. So we got Ruth. Go to number 2 there. You got Ruth. She's mentioned in the genealogies. You got Tamar's mentioned in Matthew's genealogy. Rahab or Rechab, however you want to pronounce it, is mentioned in the genealogy. Bathsheba is indirectly mentioned in the genealogy. There's one more woman in there. Anybody know who that one is? Very significant. One more. Mary is mentioned in that genealogy. Mary, the mother of Jesus. Okay, you can come sit down. Now, if we were to go back and you kind of trace these things back here for a moment, number 3, what is Ruth's relationship to King David? Go back and check. Do the guess. Work it out. She's not a grandmother. She's a great grandma. Because Ruth is mama to Obed, which means mother, grandmother to Jesse, great grandmother to David. Okay. Now, how is she connected to Jesus, who two of those accounts connects? How is she connected to Jesus? I'm not talking about tell me what great she is, but what is she? She's in the line of Jesus, in the line of Christ. Okay. What do we get maybe a chance to see in this account altogether, in this book? What are we getting a chance to see? That God is a God of mercy to undeserving people. Mercy to Naomi, who was in the place she shouldn't have been because her husband made choices that he shouldn't have done. Yes, do we see God obviously enacting his wrath? It appears to be some bit of a chastisement where you have Elimelech's gone, Mahlon's gone, Chilion's gone, and that. But at the same time, it's not completely removed altogether. There's a sense of mercy that God allows even someone who's unwilling or not unwilling, someone who's done wrong and is kind of facing the consequences of it, to find God's forgiveness. But not only is it that Naomi finds God's forgiveness, but who else gets forgiven? Ruth does. And just to show you how abundant the forgiveness is, what happens? She allows her to be in the line of King David and of Jesus. By the way, did you know that's how it happens with us? When you get saved, guess what you get to be in? The line of Jesus. You get to become his own brother, the Bible says. His own family. You're not necessarily by physical birth or physical marriage, but by a relationship with God, you get to become one of his children because you're connected to Jesus. By adoption. You get adopted into his family. Okay. Let's finish with some questions. Number 1, how has this lesson helped you understand God's grace towards sinful people? How can you apply this to relationships you have, especially in school and in your family? Anyone can be saved? Okay. God's mercy is sufficient. Okay? God's so gracious to us, we should be gracious to others. Okay? Okay, in what ways did Ruth demonstrate her faith in God, and what can we learn from these acts? A few things she did to demonstrate her faith. Okay, that's one. She abandoned the old to embrace the new. Okay, what else? She did something else beyond that, obviously, majorly beyond that. Huh? Yeah, she abandoned the old culture to a new culture, but something even more significant. What was it? Okay, let's go a little further. There's action. Yeah, we've already said that. Okay, she does something else. Remember, Boaz made comments, says, you did even more than you did at the beginning. She went to provide. Okay, that's maybe we'll say that's number 2. There's a third one, a big one. The whole book's about it. No. Okay, she abandoned all, embraced the new. She served her mother-in-law, but she also submitted herself to become the one in which the Redeemer would come through. She submitted, instead of going after the young men, that's what Boaz said. He said, you decided to show Naomi your love for her so much that you were willing to submit to this process that's probably nothing to do with your culture at all, of your old life. Submit to this process where you will marry an old man to have a child raised up in the stead of Mahlon, so that the land could be preserved for the sake of Naomi and Elimelech, to show her absolute love for her mother-in-law. That's really what she did it for. It wasn't because she wanted to have children, though I'm sure she did. It was because she loved Naomi enough to give her, basically, her entire future to Naomi. Yes. Obviously, he's got his own land. He doesn't lose his. He doesn't get that. Obviously, he's got his own land because that's where she's been eating from or getting their food from, his own fields. So I'm not exactly sure what he means by marring his inheritance. I don't know if he's afraid that 2 children, 2 sets of families are going to be connected and he doesn't want to deal with the mess. I'm not sure. There's probably some explanation to that. I don't know it on it. But there's probably the intention, the worry he is that it's going to affect the other children that he may have from another family, and he doesn't want to put that. Huh? It could have been. That's possible. Could have already been married, and he didn't want to bring that into his life either. So we don't know that. It doesn't tell us. Obviously, he doesn't have any children, or it doesn't mention him having any. They get passed on that way outside of through Ruth. Boaz could have been married in the past, and his wife died, and his children are going to get his inheritance that he has of that land, maybe. It could be that Boaz is the last in his line, and that this is where he's going to get children. First, one's going to go toward the Elimelech's land, and then the other's going to go toward his. So, and that's possible. We don't know. We're left with a bunch of spaces not told. We're left hanging there. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and close in prayer. I hope this has been helpful to you, and you've got to, maybe this would be a good book to study it out a little bit more. There's some details in there we didn't really cover in full that you could do some good studying on. All right. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for your word.